In our last movie on Booleans, we got a little taste of how PHP will take something like a string which contains the number 0 and do some switching on it so that it's actually equivalent to 0. And I want to examine that a little more closely before we move on, because it's an important point. Let's create a new work area for ourselves and explore typecasting in more detail. I'm going to use Save As again, and I'm going to change my Booleans file to just be typecasting. We'll save it in my PHP sandbox. We'll go ahead and get rid of everything that we've worked with there in the Booleans file. We won't be needing that. And let's go ahead and change the name here to be typecasting. Now, we can call it typecasting, type switching, type juggling. The idea here is that out of all these different types that we've been working with, numbers, strings, that there's a fluidity between them and that we can actually switch from one type to another. And PHP will try and do this on its own. It has some pretty smart ideas about equivalency between the types. So for example, if we have something like PHP, and we'll make a variable called variable1, and we'll set it equal to the number 2 inside a string. Now that's a string. We've talked about that. It's not a number. But now let's go ahead and on the next line, let's say that variable1 should be plus equal to 3. And we talked about plus equals before. So now it's going to try and combine a string, which is 2, with the number 3. And the question is, how will it do? Well, let's go ahead and echo back the results. Echo variable1. And let's bring that up in our browser and see. We'll go back over here and we'll load up typecasting. And you'll see that it came back with 5. So it succeeded. It was able to take 2 and say, oh, you want to perform math on that? Then let me see if I can turn 2 into a number for you. And it did. And the number it came up with was 2. And therefore the operation succeeded and we came up with 5. Now this is bad programming in some ways because we would not want to actually rely on it to make this switch for us. And we should have had the right type to begin with. As another example, let's say that the string had actually been 2 brown foxes. And then we switch back and we try and add 2 to that. You'll see it still comes up with 5 for us because it takes the whole phrase 2 brown foxes and guesses, if I were going to try and convert that into a number, I bet the number I would want is 2. Now, as I said before, we don't want to rely on that, and we can tell it instead to set a type to be a certain thing. Let's try that, but first let's learn another function which is called getType, and that will tell us which type we're working with. So for example, let's set a PHP block here, which is going to be echo getType, all run together, one word, getType.